Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of See One Beautiful Soul. I'm sitting here with my dear friend, Dahlene Miller, who I met through a wonderful women in business, entrepreneurship, networking group, but it's not really networking group. It's just wonderful. And right now it's called Get Elevated. And our friend Ariel connected us. And I just feel so lucky that I met you. We had instantly connected. And it was so weird for me having 6 lawyers in my family to hear you say, and I'm a lawyer, because you are so chill. You look like you just walked off the beach, from the Bahamas, and you have such a lovely, relaxed air about you. And as we spoke, you mentioned to me that you had been through quite an ordeal yourself in a lawsuit. And I said to you, wouldn't it be amazing to have you come on the podcast and talk about all the stuff you've been through as a litigator, being on the courtroom floor, being in the thick of really heavy disputes, and how you yourself just, you walk around like you're not carrying any of that with you, and what it feels like to forgive someone who did something really horrible to you legally. And then also we'll talk about how they got away with it, so to speak, and how you wake up in the morning and how you deal with that. So without further ado, welcome, Dahlene Miller.
Thank you so much, Barbara. It's honestly, I feel so grateful to be here, and I'm so happy that we met. I do agree. We had such an incredible connection, and it's all, I think, thanks to your amazing aura and energy. Just off the bat, sitting next to you, I could feel that you were just a genuine, kind soul. And, in Florida, it's a little hard to find some of those these days. So when you find them, it's like they instantly attract. I feel like it's like magnets,
Well, we're all a reflection of each other, and we all attract where we're at, even if it's what we don't want at the time. But I'm so grateful because I wanted to be friends with you as soon as I met you. And, I was going through something like a legal thing the day I met you, and it was so weird because I sat right next to you. And I remember thinking, I think I'm going to have to hire a lawyer. And I walked into this room, and it was a brand new experience for me, this networking group. And I was thinking, like, how am I going to be present and have this looming thing over my head? And you were sitting right next to me. And I felt like God was like, oh, if you need legal advice, let me just send you an angel, like literally from above, and she'll be able to answer all your questions. And you did. Like, if you seek it, you'll find it. But I think it's sort of like fine tuning what it is that we really seek, right? I mean, I agree with what you said. That's when I grew up here in South Florida, because I also grew up here, I really didn't find people that are like me now, but that's because I wasn't like me now. Yes, I was always a good, sweet soul, and I always wanted to connect with people, but I wasn't ready to have like long lasting, deep relationships. And so I would turn that back on you. I don't think you really believe that it's hard to find people like us here, but are we looking for it? And are we believing that we will actually find it?
Trust is fragile. And so sometimes you put a lot of trust and faith into certain people. And I myself am a very giving person. I give and give and give. That's my love language. 100%. God always finds a way to put you in the position that he wants you to be. Sometimes it may not be what we want for ourselves, but it's what we need, right? And sometimes we see that we need to be pulled out of a situation that's extremely toxic for us because maybe it's something we have worked our entire lives up to be. And we finally get to that stage, and then like a Band-Aid, you're just ripped,
Yes. What made you a forgiving person throughout your life?
Forgiveness came, I think, at a very late stage of my life for me. I came from a family with a predominantly Hispanic father. That is very hard. I was the firstborn. So I came from a family that was extremely strict and was very harsh on their punishments, so to speak. So my purpose in becoming a lawyer was actually to defend those that were voiceless or innocent, weren't able to speak on their own behalf. And ironically enough, I had made a promise when I was very young that, one day I would get up and get my doctorate degree and tell my father, essentially that it was because of my mother and God's love that I made it here, and that I'm going to be a fighter for justice. And so I came from a place of a lot of resentment, anger, frustration throughout my undergrad career up until even law school. And it wasn't until I passed the bar, became an attorney, that my father and I finally sat down, had a conversation, and were really able to work past a lot of the things that we had never discussed in my childhood. And from that place of forgiveness is where I really started to see all of the layers and, so to speak, anchors that I had holding me back, just released. It was incredible. And I started to look back at all of the difficulties in my life, and I realized a lot of them were just barriers I had put in front of myself, because I was told when I was younger I was not good enough. I was told I wouldn't get past an associate's degree or high school. And I was also born, my birth is a miracle in and of itself. My mom almost passed away. I was premature. There was no heartbeat when they had found me. She was just going in for a normal checkup, and the lack of oxygen, they said, could cause me, issues down the line as far as mental disabilities. And I praise God every day that not only did I not have any kind of mental disabilities or any issues, so to speak, but I was able to walk across the stage and, make my mother and my family proud in obtaining a doctorate and now helping people every day. So.
Wow, wow, wow. I can really relate to forgiving father for being challenging. My dad and I we just recorded an episode of this podcast yesterday. And it was really meaningful. And I had that talk with my dad multiple times in my life. And I think that when you have the courage to forgive someone who's still living, and you actually forge ahead, and I've always said this and I'll say it again, I'm not saying put yourself in harm's way and sit with someone and be in the presence of someone who could, God forbid, physically or sexually abuse you or even emotionally abuse you. But if you think there might be a chance that the person could, be safe to be around, even though you had a past with them that was difficult. And again, please consult your local doctor and mental health professional before you. This is not medical advice whatsoever or psychological advice, but whoever's listening to this knows that there are people in your life who are not necessarily abusive. We use that word very flippantly, but maybe they made a lot, not even a little mistakes, a lot of mistakes in the past. But there's a part of you that knows that if I sat with them and I decided to forgive what happened, I could potentially move forward in a new relationship. And I know for certain, and I could really write a book on forgiving father, that it has healed my heart in ways that medicine, therapy, meditation, yoga could never do.
Never.
So I'm glad that we share that. And that totally makes sense now why we really connected, because I really believe that to the extent that we are healing and in the ways in which we're healing, that's actually who we really attract. It's not really like, oh, we look alike or we make the same, people say you attract your bank account. You might attract the potential for your bank account, in either direction. But right. I think the people who you heal with, even if it's subconscious, like that's who you're attracting, because you really attract, I think, where you're psychologically and emotionally at. So I feel lucky that I met you again. Okay, so great. What is the biggest thing that you had to forgive in your life?
My father, just because of being the oldest, I also had to protect my siblings. Being Hispanic, we did grow up with a lot of physical discipline, so to speak. And so on top of that, add and couple that my grandfather was a Marine, very hardcore, owned a chartering company. So my dad came from this structure where it was just a lot of discipline. And so we almost led a sheltered life. And I think that through him always pressuring not only myself, but my siblings, and telling us always that we were never good enough and hoping that we would one day obtain that level of being good enough. I had to really let him know that had it come from a place of love and nourishment and support, I told him possibly I could have ended up at Harvard Law instead of University of Miami, which University of Miami is still an incredible law school. I made so many connections, and I don't think I would be where I would be today had I not gone there. But just trying to relate to him the fact that, we could have gone so much farther with love instead of just harsh discipleship. And I know that I think it might be also a culture barrier. And so getting through that stage of my life, it was just for so long, so many periods. I found myself always studying the hardest. I had to take, just to be kind of vulnerable here, the LSAT multiple times before I was able to go to law school. And so these challenges always came to fruition right before the moment of the test, right? So I would study day in and day out. I would put in 12 hours, 7 days a week. I hired private tutors. I just went over and beyond to make sure I would be able to accomplish this. And on the practice exams, phenomenal, across the board, doing wonderful. It was not until the moment came when I would have to sit for either the LSAT, the bar exam, my own law school exams, that all of this past conditioning, so to speak, would start to trickle in, and those self-doubts would come in. And so I wouldn't score as high as I should have. And so it was always just, like I talked about, a hurdle that I had to overcome. And until I finally came to that place of forgiveness, and I heard my dad say that he believed in me more than he believed in himself. And he broke down, he cried, I cried. It was a real moment where I saw that he did have the best of intentions, but it just went about it all the wrong way. And it was due to his also childhood conditioning. And that's why I think the way that we mold our children, I looked into this study, it's extremely important, because up until the age of 7, really every action, everything that child sees is going to create that entire personality. It's going to mold and shape them to what they're going to be. And so he always thought that learning through hardships and difficulty would make me tough and strong. And when we were younger, he would just say, you are where you are because I made you this tough, and you're able to go into the courtroom now and stand up to judges and stand up to opposing counsel because I made you rock solid. And I said, this is true, but I think with my personality, I was already that strong person. I just needed the love and support to know that I could go this far and can go so much farther. So once that moment of forgiveness came, it was like the universe just blew up. And it came at the most perfect timing, because my dad and I had finally kindled our relationship. And it was right at that pivotal point that I was transitioning from a career. Myself and about 5 other attorneys were deciding to walk away from a very abusive firm. And so it was my father in our relationship that he was the first one I called, and he gave me the strength to walk away. And I never thought I would ever have that conversation with my dad in my life. I never thought my dad and I would be close. Once I turned 18, I told him, this is it. We are done. I'm going on my own. And so to have this forgiveness and to have the relationship that I have with my dad, I wouldn't change it for the world. It took a lot of growth on both ends, but the fact that he also was able to accept, which was the hardest part. He is a very I don't know the word in English, but machista is in Spanish.
Stubborn.
Yes. Yeah. So to find the fault in his own flaws and to actually genuinely ask me for his forgiveness, it took a lot. So we were finally able to come back full circle. And like I said, that was the strength that gave me the opportunity to walk away and ultimately really open the door to what God had been waiting to give me all this time.
So 2 things. You didn't speak to your dad from like 18 to what age?
I would say 28.
So you had like 10 years where you didn't really speak. You probably saw him at family events, but just really avoided him and stuff like that.
Essentially, yeah. My father, about 3 years into that, actually divorced my mother. So we really didn't see each other after that occurred. And it was, like I said, until I graduated from law school.
And did you reach out or did he?
He reached out.
Wow.
He'd been reaching out, asking if we could try. And for a long time, I just told him, no, you dug your grave, you buried yourself, you have to live with your decisions.
So you were being like him.
Exactly.
Which how could you not be? That's how he raised you. You can always
I,
say, you did this. Yeah.
you didn't want to give me any support, so I can do this on my own. And we had very different views on what support meant, for, for a number of things, where I thought necessity wise, like helping your child through law school, we have very different opinions on that, and so we would clash, and I would just say, see, I come to you, I'm not asking for a car or a dress, I'm asking for you to help me invest in my future. And it always came with a price. If I ever did get assistance, he would say yes, but I would charge interest, and I'm like, well, why am I even asking you
Oh
for
my
a,
gosh.
you know,
Wow.
I could go to a bank for that kind of thing. And like I
Wow.
said, very different opinions. My mother is the complete opposite. My mother is, I will help you whenever you need, and whenever you can, if you can, if not, I'm your mom, and I'm going to help you any way I can, because I know this is for your future and for your career. So very different.
Yeah. Yeah. My parents, my dad never charged me interest or anything, but I was cut off financially when I was 18. It wasn't just the money. I remember feeling emotionally dropped. And it's sad that for that generation, and probably beyond that generation too, it all became so financial ties to emotional support from dads. It's like, I think, up until like the 1980s, maybe 90s, dads were working and moms were home. And so even though there was this feminist revolution in the 70s and 80s, if you had children, usually the dad was the breadwinner. And I think there is something really fascinating and beautiful about a masculine energy bringing home money, and women being this like homemaker. And, because I've studied so much in my faith and Judeo-Christian philosophy about having a woman at home and how it's like the most amazing job you can have. I'm not saying dads can't be fathers, but there is something really beautiful about that dynamic if it's done well.
Right.
And it's not mutually exclusive. There are wonderful moms who are able to balance, my sister's a great example. That sounds like it was almost in a flash that you said the world opened up. I love that idea, or blew up. It sounds like your heart blew up, right? With love.
Universe grew up, everything literally just,
and you were able to unblock, it sounds like,
right.
because what I teach in my classes and in my book and in my workshops is that, and because I'm a master of this because it happened to me so many times, that as soon as I would let go of my anger and I'd start to forgive, I was actually able to receive blessing, because it's the anger and I don't talk to this person anymore. I don't deal with this thing in my life anymore. It's actually like a sheen of like wall. It's like a wall of like, I won't let the blessings in. Did you find that to be true as well?
Absolutely. It was blessings on blessings on blessings. And if you'd like, I can get into that story of just what had happened. So essentially, I was walking away from a firm that was also abusive, in the sense that they took a lot of our work for granted. They would tell us we were never enough, but this is kind of stereotypical in the law firm setting. And I'm not sure why they do that to us. They do that from the onset of law school, where they beat you down, and they make you feel like you're never adequate enough. So in that firm, we all worked for salaries, but also commissions. And so the commission was based off of how many cases we would close. And so when the moment came for a lot of us to walk away, the named partner, who will remain, unidentified for purposes of this podcast, decided that he was not going to pay any of us the compensation that we were owed. And some of that compensation would be, an individual's year's worth of a salary, so to speak. And so there were also other intricate matters that went on in that firm, one of which my mentor was one of the other named partners. There were two. And the other one was a very genuine, good-hearted person, and was my mentor in the legal field. Unfortunately, he had a mother of his two children. They weren't married. who decided that the relationship that we were having as mentor and mentee was not appropriate in her opinion, even though we never had anything physical. I was with my boyfriend, now fiance, that we are engaged. But she came from a place of mental disability. She was bipolar. There were several issues in there. And so she told him to stop mentoring me, only mentor male associates. And that came along with verbal abuse, where she would just call my phone. She would threaten me. She came to my job and threatened me. I asked the name partners to remove me entirely, got a new mentor. And after a year of not having spoken with that named partner, she just out of the blue one day again showed up and started taunting me again, even though we had zero communication for over a year. At that point of my life, I was getting engaged, and nothing had really been done as far as making sure security would make sure she wouldn't enter the building. And so I took that aspect of the job also very personally, because now it's my life that she was threatening, and I had to get a restraining order. And so when that happened, I told them, this is just no longer acceptable. I see what you're doing to your other associates, along with this now personal situation that was being brought in to the firm, where I think business and personal, needs to be kept separate at all times. And so I gave my 2 weeks. And actually, after hearing that 3 other attorneys were also leaving with me at that time, I extended it for about another month. Gave them the decency of time, went over and beyond, worked close to 18 hours every day to make sure all of the cases were prepped, ready for the next associate, doing everything I could to make sure that the transition would be as smooth as possible. And so immediately, once my last day came about, the named partners just decided to no longer answer my phone calls, my text messages. And when I started calling some of the other attorneys, it was the same response. And so essentially all of us were just blown off, and were advised that we were not, essentially, so to speak, with the lack of words, going to obtain our compensation for our commission, like I said, which was in some cases a substantial amount of money. And so I decided I needed a sabbatical. It was just a lot of emotional turmoil at that point, and I really needed to know where I was going as far as my direction. And so I'm sitting in my house one day, and I get a phone call from an individual I haven't spoken to in about a year and a half, a friend of mine. And out of the blue, he is asking me how I'm doing. This is right when 2020 was happening. And so there were all kinds of concerns of pandemic, and is this, what is happening with the world? And he asks me how the career is going also with all of this turmoil going on and about. And I told him, well, actually, ironically, I've decided I'm going to take 3 months off to just work on myself and reset. And he says, well, ironically enough, I actually sat with the named partner of a major law firm here in Florida. We're very good friends, and they're looking for an attorney just like you. And he's like, I can get you in communication with him, right now. And so I said, well, I wasn't ready to get a job. I kind of really wanted this mental break. But it literally fell into my lap, and we got on the phone with the named partner. He got the head of the department on the phone as well. We had a conference, and that same day they made me an offer. And the most beautiful part of that offer was that the amount of money that I was owed from my previous law firm was exactly the amount that they had offered me, plus some in a salary, and then also the commission. And so when that happened, and I didn't ask for the number, they offered it. They said, is this a good starting point for you? It was then that I realized this was God's confirmation that I needed to let go of what had happened, and that he was making it right. Even if this individual wasn't, God was. And to me, the human side of me still got to me. And I said, well, I can still make this salary. And yeah, it's a great gap. Thank you so much, God. But I still want to get my money. I worked so hard for those cases, one of which it was a huge federal case, and it was my baby. Literally from the moment I passed the bar exam, it was the first federal case for that firm. And I worked it for almost 3 years and finally got it to close, got the client the settlement that they had been owed, fought tooth and nail, almost at the brink where we thought we weren't going to win, and we did. And so I really wanted to obtain that. And I was going to file a lawsuit against the firm. And every time I would talk to one of my former colleagues about it, they would just say, listen, I don't think that's a wise decision. This person is extremely vindictive. They have reports against them for their vindictive behavior of how they go over and beyond to make sure that if you go against them, they will ruin your life. Legally, they could threaten your license. And it got to be a very dark side that I knew was always brewing in the background. I just didn't know to what level. And so over time, I came to realize that this was more a blessing to walk away unscathed, untainted, able to start on a brand new level with a firm that truly valued me and my opinion, and made up for everything and more that I could have wanted with that firm. So I decided I had to just let it go, let bygones be bygones, and walk away. And I did. And with the firm, as soon as I got in there, the difficulty that I had in my first firm of literally being just thrown into the water, whereas most attorneys, they have to start off, working on just motions and kind of like rudimentary stuff starting off. The firm that I was at, they threw you in immediately. Like I said, my first case, first day, federal case, nobody in the firm had handled the federal case. And so it was sink or swim. And we were constantly thrown into those kinds of situations. And we would have to stay up to midnight sometimes with the named partners just trying to figure it out. But it gave me an experience that a lot of attorneys have to wait 5 to 10 years to obtain. And so when I came to this new firm, the value that I brought to them was something unprecedented because they only had individuals from the defense side. So they didn't see things from a plaintiff side, able to help the homeowners in ways and see the hooks, and the nuances. And that's how I was trained and molded to see how to get around the loopholes and all of that. And so they came to me from the beginning and were just over thrilled to have me working. The head of the department was calling me. And at this point in my career, I was going on to my 3rd year. And so here I have an attorney practicing 20 years and telling me, Dahlene, I don't know what to do with this case, and giving me the hardest cases that the firm was handling and saying, we need your assistance, and so being able to essentially be, I'm trying to find the word, but just appreciated really and acknowledged for what I was bringing and helping with was all I think all of us from the former firm were really seeking. And we were always told that that was not ever good enough. We would spend days writing motions and things, and the named partner would just come in and swipe it all and redo it. And here my work was just praised. And I was appreciated in a way I had never seen. And so the appreciation with the admiration of my father and the support of that, it just started to grow and grow and grow. And it continued to grow. You would think that the buck would stop there and I would be incredibly happy. And I absolutely adored that firm. But God said, I'm not done with you yet, child. And it was during that time that I had left the firm. I had joined this new firm. At that same time, my best friend at the time and I were working at my first firm. She was the one that had introduced me to that. And so when we both left, it wasn't until we had left that abusive firm that I came to learn about her having started a new firm. And so she started a new firm with one of the other attorneys, and she didn't tell me until after the fact. And at first, I took it as just so happy for her. And it wasn't until it really started to think about how this was laid out to me and how I was excluded from this conversation, even just as a best friend, not even as a business partner, that the reality and the pain really started to sink in. And so about 6 months into my new career, I'm extremely happy, but I'm hurt because I see that I could have had something beautiful with somebody so close to me and they decided to exclude me. And so it kind of really emotionally hurt and scarred me a bit. And so my fiance was thinking, hey, let's get you out of the house. Let's get you out of this rough. You're in your head right now. You're in a great place. And I know you wanted to be a partner. I know you wanted to start your own thing, but you're working remotely. You're making more than you ever made in your life. Like, why? And something inside of me was just like, I want more. I wanted to be a partner. I wanted to have a firm. And so we went to a soccer game for the Inter Miami soccer team. And we're sitting there watching the game, and he got us amazing seats. And I see that the sponsor at the stadium is this law firm. And I recognize the name of one of the lawyers. It's Demesman and Dover. And I had met Jeremy Dover in law school. And Jeremy Dover and I had actually met at a Panthers game for unrelated. My mom had brought me one day to a Panthers game because my mom was in the medical field. She's a case manager. And so she deals with sometimes attorneys and stuff, but we're in very different worlds. I handle homeowners property. She handles the medical aspect of workers' compensation, but she got these tickets to a suite. She invited me over, and I had met Jeremy Dover there. And that was roughly 3 years ago from the date of the game. And so I'm sitting there watching the game, and I was like, wow, I looked them up. I'm like, first thought is, I'm so happy he started his own firm. That's incredible. And I see that they're only doing PIP and bodily injury. They have nothing in my world as far as homeowners insurance. And so I thought to myself, wow, how crazy would it be if I became a partner with them at this big firm that literally just started, is sponsoring and putting their name out there, is on the radio. My best friend, it was just her and her colleague. There was nobody else. They didn't even have paralegals. They weren't even advertising. They had nothing. And that was kind of what she had tried to relay to me of why I wasn't going to be involved. But that's a whole nother discussion. And so I literally, after going to the game, the next Monday, I'm sitting at my job. I'm extremely happy. And I get a call. And it's Jeremy Dover. And he says, hey, I want to talk to you for a sec. You popped up on my newsfeed on social media, saw your story, just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. And
He called you
he called me.
after you had this thought. You didn't even call him.
No, just like the first job. I never even called that person, the friend of mine that originally connected me with this firm. And so I said, yeah, I'm wrapping up a case. Let me just finish everything over here, and I'll give you a call. So I give him a call back, and he's asking me how everything is going. If I'm happy, I tell him I am extremely happy. I'm able to work remotely. I was able to travel a lot, which is unheard of as a lawyer. So this COVID kind of put us in a position that a lot of lawyers, I think, would have dreamed of always having, because working remotely as a lawyer was like unheard of. We always had to be in court, depositions, mediations, all of the sort, always in person. And so he tells me that him and his partner just started up this law firm, and they are looking to start a chapter for property damage. And they wanted to work with somebody that they know is ambitious and that they personally know. And he asked me to come in and do an interview with him and his partner. And the next week, I sat with them, and they made me the offer to partner with them and essentially run the entire division for the homeowners property damage division of Demesman and Dover. And I accepted, and it was with a heavy heart because I still absolutely adore and love the prior firm. And unfortunately, they couldn't make me that offer that I wanted to take my life to the next level and to ultimately be in the position I had only dreamed would take, 10 years of practice in the making. I'm less than 5 years in my career, and now I'm a partner at a major law firm. And I think it is all thanks to nothing less than forgiveness and God sometimes having to hurt us or allow the world's and people's actions to hurt us so that we can ultimately still get to where we want to be, right? And to allow those doors to open. And sometimes these things come with pain, but through the pain and through the hardship is the dawn, and so a quote that has always stuck with me is that it is always darkest before the dawn. And my life, I feel, has just been an attestation of all of that, and of the greatness that God can be even in the darkest of hours. Even when you think it's over and you're not going to have anything, he comes in swooping in and literally provides you with that love and that guidance and those blessings.
Oh my gosh. First of all, you really need to go on a speaking tour because that's such a brilliant story and you tell it so well.
Yeah.
I see three other things that you didn't necessarily touch on. And that's only because I get the joy and honor of getting to listen to your story up close and personal, as well as all of our listeners right now. You had three things in each of those two big moments of your life. Well, I guess that we could say there are three big moments. You forgiving your father, allowing your dad to come in after years and years of beating him down and saying, you made your bed, you lied in it, you allowed him in. So you allowed. And then the other two things also, there was an allowance, but you said, and this is different than what happened with your dad. Both cases, when you were great pun, when the law firms called you, you were just sitting there. That's what you said. I was just sitting there.
Yeah.
So we learned from, Esther Hicks' philosophy, which is like the secret or law of attraction. I call it godliness, God power. But, that idea that if you only when we're sitting and in the stillness, in the beauty of what is right now, as dark and scary as it is right now for anyone who's listening, if you can just be with it, if you can just sit with it in the stillness. I was just sitting there. But here's the thing, you were allowing while you were sitting there. You weren't just sitting there like, oh, it's so hard and dark, it's so scary. You were like, I'm going to take 3 months. That's what you said. I'm going to take some time to sit and heal from this really abusive, scary situation I was just in. And here's the third thing, which is huge. You said in both of the cases when the law firms called you, I was so happy. I was happy just sitting there and trying to figure out my life. Right. And
Yeah.
then all the more so when Mr. Dover, I think was his name,
Yes.
Jeremy Dover, when he called you, you were just sitting there at the game. And the third part is you had vision. In the first circumstance with your dad, you said, okay, let me let him in. I have some vision about what the possibility could be. In the second situation, before the law firm called you, excuse me, before the law firm called you, drink. Before the law firm called you, you had vision. I'm leaving this other abusive place because I'm certain there's better out there for me. And I'm sick of working 18-hour days, and I'm sick of being abused and told I'm not good enough. And notice how it was linked with your dad, because maybe the only reason you let him in at the time was because you were sick of putting up with that philosophy. And there was a part of you that wanted to change that dynamic with your dad.
Right. Yes.
I'm no longer having a relationship with you, Dad, that allows you to treat me like I'm not good enough. And I'm gonna let you call me because I have vision that I'm going to allow this new part. It's very deep. Think about that, how you twisted the little udders of that situation, right? I'm going to allow in a new universe. And by doing that and forgiving you, now I can allow in a new job that doesn't allow that. And then the third time you had vision sitting at the game.
Yeah.
You see this billboard, you're like, oh, I want to be bigger. I want to be in lights. I want to be up there too with my friend Jeremy. And the universe went, okay, give her a call. I hear these crazy stories that we are magnets. You said that word before. We do magnetize, right?
Yes.
We only magnetize that which we allow in and that which we make space for. But you were very happy. When Jeremy asked you, how are you doing? You didn't say in that story, by the way, which I'm sure you did, but you didn't mention it. I just saw your billboard. That's so weird that you're calling me. You never said that.
No, I don't even think he even knows that story, actually.
Okay. Well, number one, we have to send this to him as soon as this episode comes out. But how crazy is that you were so in your soul of soul that you didn't even bring up like me? I don't think I'm egotistical. I just love to connect the dots in my life. So I'll be like, oh my God, I was just thinking about you. And I just told this person, and I play the match memory game all the time. I match people up for love, for business. You know, you're probably like that too. I just love to, the first time I met you, you're like, oh, call this lawyer. I'm not that kind of lawyer, but you need to, we naturally do that. Right.
Right.
But it's crazy to me that you were so in the soul work that you just went, yeah, of course he's calling me. Cause I sat, but you didn't tell him. You didn't say, I had this thought that this is the how of how I'm going to get to that name. It's you. And he just called you. So for anyone listening right now, who's in between jobs, which is a lot of people, and you're figuring out what you're going to do next, follow the 3 steps of Dahlene, which is sit your butt down and start taking care of yourself. 1, then have some vision. What would I love to allow into my life? What would I love to allow in? And the third one is, I'm so happy right here and right now. I'm not only going to be happy if this comes in, the allow thing. I'm happy right now. You said to Jeremy, I'm so happy. I'm working for a law firm. It's that I love. They're treating me so well. Everything's great. You didn't say, I really love it if you could just, make me a partner. But then he was like, great, you're doing great. Let me give you this opportunity. And then you allowed further. So that's like step 4, allow it even more. As humans, and we talked about this the other day in my workshop, that it's the tolerating. Can you tolerate being happy? Usually there's something in our circle, the elements, the energy that's around us that's saying, no, don't be that happy. No, just suffer a little bit. Take on that. Oh, that's a good juicy thought of guilt and pain and suffering. And let's think about that memory. I mean, I'm only saying this because I'm a master of it. I have to swat bad thoughts all day long. Like, I can't open that door. Nope, I'm not interested in that.
100%. It was the pain that I thought was fueling my energy, that was fueling my ambition. It was this, I have to prove you wrong. You told me I'll never get past this, and I'm going to not only do that, but exceed it.
Yeah.
That I thought was the fuel of my power. And it was actually the limitation.
Well, that's how you grew up. And Lady Gaga, I remember she accepted an award. I think it was a Grammy not too long ago. And there's a speech, it's got millions and millions of views. And it's not fair because it's taken out of context. But what she says is, for anyone, this is for all those people that told me I couldn't. When I first saw it, I cried because I was that person who was bullied in middle school, and also by the world and by my dad and by a lot of people and bosses that I've had. And I thought, what a waste of her speech, right? And easy for me to say. I didn't work my butt off to get a Grammy. So it's really easy being a couch surfer and watching someone and saying, I would have said X, Y, and Z. It's so hard when you get up there. Who knows what you're going to say?
Right.
But as the educator in me, I wouldn't want her fans who are 16 and being bullied right now to think, as long as I keep being bullied, they're going to give me my stamina so I can win a Grammy. It's not for those people. It's for whoever you have become, because you have to allow a bully into your life.
Right.
As hard as that sounds, we all choose, our soul goes, that's a good mom for me. That's a good dad for me. I'll choose that path because I want to grow the most. I want to maximize my growth potential in my life as a soul. Right. And it's so hard to imagine that because you're like, how did I pick this person? Oh my God.
I think that is so amazing. I have to just interrupt you for a second because I have never met anybody else that has shared that theory. And I have read about it in a book called Unveiled Reality, where it's exactly what you're saying. The soul gets a choice before we're born to live a life. And so the way that the book teaches is that do not take pity for people if they seem like they have a physical ailment or they're suffering, because perhaps they chose a life of suffering to better themselves and their soul, because maybe in a prior life they were evil, right? And so this is their way of essentially atoning for that evilness and making a better soul and of themselves so that they can get closer to God. And I've
It's
never
so many things. Yeah, it's so many. This is a Kabbalistic idea. It's not mine, but it is a Jewish idea. And when I heard it, I went, oh my God, it's not just chaos. I didn't just choose to suffer, and by the way, I think suffering is optional. And I heard that from my rabbi's wife a long time ago, which was also
wow.
very helpful. Pain is not optional. Pain is when we're a baby and the tooth comes in, it hurts. And it's almost subconscious, God saying, by the way, when you grow, but you're going to get teeth and it's going to be cool because then you're going to chew food. Like it's so subconscious, right? But it hurts. We know that it hurts, but then we're like, oh, cool. We get on some subliminal level, even the person with the lowest IQ, I have to have a little pain to get this reward. And it sucks, right? I heard somebody say yesterday, it's amazing how Democrats and Republicans are coming together on this issue of Ukraine. And I'm like, yeah, it stinks that we had to get to innocent people dying to come together on this issue, right? But look at the Russians who are coming into Ukraine and putting their guns down saying, I don't really want to be here. I was told I was going to be keeping peace. I mean, the world is on such a breakthrough. It's in a terrible state. And yet at the same time, there's so much light breaking through because we just can't have Nazis anymore. We can't have fascists anymore. We can't. The world can't contain it because we know that it's just wrong. There are a few dictators left. We see that. We see your colors, but there's a huge part of the world that's like, and I guess I'd rather die than be a Nazi.
Right. And interestingly enough, they're saying that if this is a war, this kind of war and the tactics that they're using is not like anything we've ever seen. It's more so corruption from the inside, not warriors and soldiers at our forefronts. It's getting us to be divided, right? And so divided amongst ourselves and the government that we no longer trust the government. And then what better way to then swoop in, right? And really attack us. And so that message of letting the light in, of not allowing these things to divide us as a community as a whole, to respect each other's opinion and have genuine discussions.
That's real world peace, and I think it's okay to have a little bit of mistrust for the government or your own party or leaders, because it's really not about them. They're just there to kind of keep time or keep the notes going. Like it's us and God, and it's us and God. Right. And I think it's great to have different communities and different cultures and different foods and different religions. It's beautiful. There's a million ways to connect to God. It doesn't have to be through Judaism, through Christianity, through Islam, through Buddhism or Hinduism or Jain. There could be many, many ways to connect. But as long as we respect each other and we can dance together and sing together and say, I respect you. I respect your texts. I'd love to learn them with you and see what you learn. Please check out what I learned and then grow from each other. It's okay.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that the world is in this really cool place right now that we are standing up. We are standing up and we're standing together. And it's really neat to see. And I hope that, justice continues to be served.
Yeah. I mean, like right now they're sending Russian informants and undercover people to create chaos amongst us. And that divide, that's what I'm talking about with the divide, is they're purposely making us focus on other issues or divisions that they know are trigger points for our society. And doing it from a place that seems genuine and concerned and loving, but really it's just to cause, in some instances, chaos, right? And mistrust amongst ourselves or amongst the government. So that's really what I think we need to check, triple check, fact check every single thing, every aspect of it, because even if it does sometimes and the Bible talks about this, where it will be a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? And for you guys, the Torah, right? And I think that's kind of something that we're seeing now. And so to wake up, so to speak, and be able to see that sometimes it's for a bigger purpose, that we need to more than ever come together, like you said, have the world peace, and instead of fighting about these divisions that we have, find a place of healing.
God is infiltrating in certain ways, and we are going to fight. We're going to win the fight. We might lose little pieces of the battle, but we're going to win the war.
Right.
So thanks for helping me win the war today, Dahlene. Lots of love to you.
Lots of love.